what happens in Marin County and other counties around the San Francisco Bay Area and within California, when there has been an accident, is typically it's CHP, California Highway Patrol, that will appear, you know, on the highway, or it could be local police officers or sheriffs who appear. But no matter who it is, what they're first doing is trying to make sure that everybody's okay. And any emergency medical treatment that's needed, they're going to make sure that someone gets. That's the way that they're trained. And then they're going to try and figure out what happened with the accident and whether or not there are drugs or alcohol involved. That's something that they're taught to suspect, especially the CHP, part of their training. So what they will do is they will try and get very close to people, and they want to be able to smell their breath. So if someone's sitting in their car at the driver's seat, they may, you know, kind of stick their head in, or if someone's outside of the car and they're okay to walk, they may have them get out of the car, and often they'll put them upwind from them so they can kind of see if they can smell the odor of an alcoholic beverage. They're looking for signs of impairment. The problem with these cases is that what the cops might see as impairment might just be someone who has poor balance, is having issues because they have a head injury, especially when airbags go off or someone hits their head, whiplash. Different things can cause people to not, you know, just the shock and fear and craziness of being in an accident, especially when the car is banging off another car or the side of the freeway or turns over, or, you know, anything that can happen. People are often in shock, freaked out, not themselves. And so officers can see different symptoms that they will think maybe that has to do with alcohol or drugs, and they'll continue to investigate. Now, what they will eventually do once they figure out if, you know, who may have caused the accident. It doesn't even have to be the person who caused the accident, though, to get arrested for a DUI. All they need is, you know, cause to get there, and an accident is cause for them to show up and investigate. And any of the drivers, once they figure out who the drivers are, who they think were impaired or at or over the limit, they will typically test them. Typically, if the person's able to, they will use a preliminary alcohol screening test. That's called a PAS test. They'll use what's called a PAS device. Here's an example. This is called an Alco Sensor 4. And what this is a device where a mouthpiece goes in here, and they'll have someone blow into it, typically twice, waiting a couple minutes between blows, and they want to see where the person is on the breath alcohol scale there. So if it's 0.08 or greater, they're usually going to arrest that person for a DUI. If it's just under that, we see them arrest people for DUIs all the time, thinking that maybe it's going to go up or they can get them on impairment. But anyway, this is what they're doing. Now, someone, when they're arrested for DUI after they've blown into that, or if they can't or decide not to, because you're not required to blow into this device, okay? This is a preliminary alcohol screening device. When CHP is investigating an accident and asks you to do field sobriety tests, you know, whether it's, count your fingers or stand on one leg, counting, or doing this one, the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, or the heel to toe, which is the walk and turn test, you don't have to do any of those. You can respectfully decline them when they're doing their DUI investigation or accident investigation. They want you to do this. You can also decline blowing into that breath test. Once they tell you that you are under arrest, they're required to say that you, under implied consent law, which is something that exists for you as a driver because you signed something under penalty of perjury at DMV that said if you are arrested for a DUI, you will consent to either a breath or a blood test. And in some cases, if you're not able to do either, they may have you do a urine test. But basically, you don't have to do any of those tests, but if you are arrested, and typically, if you're arrested, if you're able to walk around and you're not too injured, they'll usually cuff you or they'll tell you you're under arrest. And then they read you this admonition, and you're required at that point to do either a breath test or a blood test. Now, if they think you're under the influence of drugs, they're almost always going to request a drug test, unless you blow under their preliminary machine and you're so high over the legal limit, they know that you're going to blow high again on another one. They might not even do, I've seen them not even do requesting a blood test because they think you might also be on drugs. But if you're under or don't blow into that and they think you're on drugs, then during their investigation, once they've arrested you, they will probably request that you do a blood test and not give you a choice. A separate report comes up for accidents. It's called an accident report, and that's something that the insurance companies can get, and it's separate from the police report. They use it to show who they think caused the accident and what happened. But anyway, accident investigations are often very thorough. So I mean, the officers aren't trying to just finish their shift up or something else comes up and they need to get going to that. Once they've gotten to a certain point, if they think you're under the influence of drugs, what they may do in an accident DUI is have you evaluated by a drug recognition expert. That's something that typically will happen back at the station, and that is a full different examination they'll do, like the balancing test, like the preliminary alcohol screening test, the DRE exam, the drug recognition evaluation by the drug recognition expert is not something that you have to do. You're not required to do it. And they're supposed to tell you at the beginning that you are not required to do that. They need to get your permission to do it. So again, you don't have to go through that. And if they're doing that to you, if they put you in a dark room and they're checking your pupils and they're checking your pulse and they're checking your muscle rigidity, by pinching different parts of your skin, there are a number of different tests that they will do for that. It's called the 12-step process. You're not required to go through that. And, by going through those tests, especially if you know that you have taken drugs, you're helping them with their case. So, do I recommend doing that or not doing that? Every case is different. Every situation is different. So I'm not going to say yes or no, but what I am telling you is that you are not required to give them more evidence for when they want to do the drug examination. What you are required to do, though, in an accident case is if you have been arrested, do either a breath or blood test. If they give you the choice, you get to pick. Now, in the more serious cases, what happens is you can have accidents with people getting injured. Happens all the time. If it's someone in your car, not yourself, but someone in your car or someone in another car, if it's a very minor injury, the cops will typically do a DUI with injury as a misdemeanor. But if the injury is more significant, and more significant doesn't take much. It's a fine line where it is. But you get someone with a concussion, head injury, someone who needs a good number of stitches, major complaint needing, ambulance to take you to hospital for back pain or something like that. I mean, it doesn't take much for the cops to put this down and write it up as and arrest you for a felony DUI. When that happens, the bail gets really high, and eventually it may turn into a misdemeanor DUI when the DA's office files it, or it may get reduced to that later. But what you need to know is that if there are serious injuries or injuries that are just above their misdemeanor level, that you can be arrested for a felony DUI, and it can be a very high bail, often in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the number of people who are injured and the severity. So that's basically what happens with the police investigation. The other thing is if they take you to the hospital, often an officer will stay at the hospital with you and wait until you're cleared, and then they'll take you to jail after. And sometimes the injuries or your injuries are so severe as a driver that they may switch off and have officers at your door for days until you're cleared to leave the hospital. These cases are very serious, and you should definitely consult with an experienced DUI lawyer when you're facing these types of charges after a DUI accident. Thank you.